I had no idea when Mom and I started dating. Just a little bit of an idea. I heard, different stories through the years, some from her and some from family and different people, that was born almost able to sing and play the piano. Her mama said that she would sing kind of tunes when she was in the cradle or in the baby bed before she could talk. And sometimes she would hear her humming a tune. But when she got to be a little bit bigger, I know she liked to sit on the kitchen steps on the farm that was open, and she could sit on one step and then put her songbook up on the next step. So probably she was 4, 5, 6 years old when she started doing that, and she mentions in the little her own story she wrote about her sister Lou upsetting her by taking the songbook away when she was playing. So she tells that she learned to play the piano on the back door steps. Well, one of her aunt had an old pedal organ, and when the aunt's husband bought her a piano, she asked if Maxine's parents could keep the organ at their house out on the farm. So they moved it out there, and that was Maxine could play that. She said she sat on the edge of an armchair because they didn't have a stool, but she could pump the organ and play music, and said nobody complained, but they liked to sing at their house too. And as she got older, I think the family actually had a quartet that sang some, not wide, not professionally or anything, but her mom and dad both sang in the choir, I know, in church when I started going to Jacksonville, and Lou, I think, did too some, and Maxine. In fact, that was the first time I had a real good look at her, because when I went to Sunday school that first day, she had her back to me. She was playing the piano. And but she didn't play for church there. She did out in the country church before they moved to town when she was 16, when her dad got too weak with diabetes to farm anymore. And her sister was in college already, so they moved to Jacksonville, a college town, to be with Maddie Lou and have the family back together. And I know she sang in the college chorale and things like that. I've seen pictures of that. They had a smaller Baptist church just down the street from where they moved in there at Jacksonville. But her mom kind of wanted to associate with some of the other people in town. That some were college teachers and things like that, and so they went to First Baptist Church, and they fit right in. I mean, singing in the choir and different things. So that was the first time I saw how pretty Maxine was in the face and all, was when she was up in the choir. I remember one time that when we started dating, she took me to a singing, the Southern gospel style, that you hear on TV now a lot. And they had several quartets, and she said they used to come to her church, and like I said, the family sang in quartet some. And then while they were still on the farm, because she could play the piano by ear, and in fact, she started to take piano one time with a lady there close by, probably an Arab. And I guess the lady heard her play, and she said she didn't want to teach her. She said, it'll mess up your natural ability, to play by ear if I start trying to teach you the notes and everything. So when she started playing for singing schools, which is a tradition in North Alabama. During the summertime, people get together, young people, and some of them, if they're able, for about a week, and they'll have classes at the church, a couple hours a day, teaching them how to sing by the shape notes. The shape notes, well, some of them would put them on a line like regular notes, but they really knew the sounds from the shape of it, what the sound, A, B, C, or whatever it was. And so she used to play as a teenager. She told me a time or two about staying away from home, not too far, but she'd stay with the family at the church there, wherever they were, and and play for the singing schools. And she learned that if she didn't know the song, if the teacher or whoever's leading singing would just sing a little bit, the first couple bars, I guess you'd say, she could play it from there on. And I've always been mystified about how that could happen. But she said it did happen. So here, at the church where I was pastor, the last church before we went to Thailand, we had a regular pianist and choir director and all, and Mom was she worked in other areas of the church, and I don't remember that she was in the choir. She was pretty busy as a pastor's wife and all. But of course, that's when her call came, as I've told y'all before, from singing this one song that I asked her to sing, and that's when the Lord called her. So I don't remember how much she actually used her piano skills and voice in our church because of other commitments she had. But when we got ready to go to Thailand, we had bought a old used piano when I first got out of seminary, and the churches where I pastored there let me run the revival the first year, and so we got some small honorariums and had enough money to buy a piano, I think for about $100. This was in 1954. So we brought that up to Hewleton here in Anniston and used it here at our house in the pastorium. But when we decided to go, or were ready to go to Thailand, we took it down to the Forbes Music Company and swapped it for an accordion. She knew that we hoped to do some street preaching, but we'd also seen a slide. We had some slides from the mission board, and there was one picture of Ronald and Evelyn out, and I think Evelyn, she was playing an accordion, and Ronald was leading the singing and so on. So we kind of figured that we probably could use it, and so we took that accordion with us, and she did play. Bob probably remembers because he was about 2 feet tall, and when we first started going out doing that after we moved out, and we didn't have any other instrument at the house that I remember. Now, in our church at that time, Chowching South Baptist Church, they had a little pump organ. And later they bought a piano when we got the new building built. But she and Julianne would alternate, usually playing the music for the worship service. But early on, when we first got to Thailand, even we got there in the 31st of October and got settled into a rented house, and our language school didn't start till the 1st of January. Even during that time, she was invited to play the piano at the student center and some other places, I think, because she could play anything they wanted to sing, And I remember one night, student center, the lights went out. Well, several times because the power wasn't so good. And she could go on and play, and they could go ahead and sing. So she was very versatile as far as being able to do anything with a keyboard, and she enjoyed it. And I don't know if I ought to tell this, but one of my regrets, one of our Christmas times at the hospital when we were going to go out caroling, the doctors and nurses and the missionaries were going to do a night of caroling one time. And I don't know why, but I forgot about asking Mom to play the music. And we did not take the accordion. I mean, she played it all the time, for our Christmas caroling. I don't know if my head was full of other thinking or what happened, but, and she never said anything about it, but I felt so bad that I forgot that. But she was always available. She taught the lepers to sing Silent Night in English one time. They wanted to do it. And she figured out how to use the Thai letters and wrote them on the blackboard. And when they pronounced the Thai, it came out the English sound. It was a very creative way to do it. And this was all her idea. And when they wanted to sing Silent Night in English, and they were only allowed to carol at the doctor's offices and doctor's homes and our pastor's home. And they got to the first home, Dr. Al Hood's, and our houses up there were built kind of up on stilts like, and so the family was up on the front porch looking down at us, at her. I was with another group. And so Ajahn Manope, who was he and his wife were the parents at the leprosy building. They had both had arrested cases of leprosy, but he was good with music, and he could play the accordion. But Mom was doing the playing that night, but he was kind of leading the service. And so they sang a couple of Thai carols, and then he started getting ready to lead in prayer. Well, they were supposed to have a couple of Thai carols and then Silent Night, and then have the prayer to close out their time there and go on to the next house. He started to say something, and when she heard him start to pray, she knew he had lost his courage, about doing the song. She just started playing the accordion, butt into it. And I don't know if the doctor's family heard him start to say anything, probably not, but she could tell, and she said, we're gonna do this, after they learned it. And they sang it so well, and Al Hood, who was not just real emotional kind of guy, but the tears were flowing down his face for that song. So Mom, well, it was just her personality that worked with people, and but the music, she played music on every occasion, and later on, of course, she learned to play the Thai instrument, the Renat Ek, which is a Thai-style xylophone, the wooden bass and keyboard, bamboo keyboard, and the lead instrument in the old Siamese classical orchestras. And she learned that just by listening, and we found one and bought it. And we had it in the living room in our house in Bangkla, and one of our doctors was Joanne Gocher. She liked music, and she was a pianist too, but that particular year, when our group from Bangkla was going over to the Cha-Ching Sao Baptist Church to have a part in their Christmas program, she wanted them to sing a Thai hymn or two, Thai music hymn, which we had a little songbook that some different Thai Christians, some arrested, some were lepers actually, that wrote the hymns. So she wanted Mom to be able to play this Thai instrument so they could sing those songs, make it real. So she would come to the house and sing them over, and then we had a older lady worked with me in the chaplain's office at the hospital. I can't remember her name, but she was so sweet, and she was proud of Mom playing the music and all, and she would come over and sing some of these songs that they hoped to use, a couple of them. But they sang more than those, but I don't remember how many days sitting on the floor they were singing. And Mom tells her testimony that one night after we'd gone to bed, I don't know if she hadn't gone to sleep. I think she woke up, and 4 of those tunes were going through her head. And she jumped up and went into the living room and started playing them. She played all 4 of those songs in a row, and it stuck with her, that way, and so she never forgot them. And later, they were able to do their trip to Cha-Ching Sao, and then she used it a lot of different churches and places. And not long before, this was interesting, not long before we were ready to leave to retire, Ajahn Manope had been asking me, wanting to know if he wanted to play some duet with Mom on the Renats. And we had a Saturday night service at Bangkla Church. It started out as a kind of a study on home life and marriage and so on, but it became just a fellowship night. So they met every Saturday night, and sometimes there'd be a sermon, sometimes games or all kind of different things, and get together, and then come back in the morning. But so we got it set up. We finally found a date. I think it was along about April of '93, and he was so excited about it. And so when we got to the church that night, they had these stools fixed to put the Renata on. Mom was not able to sit in the floor by that time, so they had chairs there, and they were about 12 feet apart. And he told her, she said, well, what should we do? And he said, well, you just pick out the songs, and when you get started, I'll join in. So they played very good, very well together, right along. And he told me afterwards, when we went out to have some refreshments out in the churchyard, he said, I thought I would have to play real slow, so it wouldn't get ahead of Ma'am Stewart, but he said she played right regular speed. He said I was impressed, so that made me feel good. And our instrument at that time, we brought one. The first one we bought, I don't remember what we paid for it, but we brought it home on one of our furloughs and used it here in the States some. And when we went back, we were needing another instrument. I don't remember. I was talking to one of the fellows at the hospital. He was like a nurse aide who was a local boy, and he also played in some Thai orchestras around there. I don't remember what he played, but he said, I'll be on the lookout, Ajahn. So one day he told me I found an instrument, and he said, I brought it home. They let me bring it home, so if you and Ma'am want to come to the house and see if you want it or not. He said, now there's no pressure. And he said, I don't think you're going to want it. He said, it's too old. Well, he said, he just kept emphasizing that. It is so old. And, well, we went over, he lived over by the post office. We went over to his house, and Mom sat down and started playing it, and it had such a good sound. And she looked up to me and said, I must have this. Or I want this. Maybe she said, I want this. Well, we started talking about it, and she said, I like it. And he said, well, I'm glad you do, but now remember, I didn't promise him anything. The family turned it over to him to sell, and I don't know what kind of a cut he might have got out of it, but he kept reassuring us, and Mom especially, that you don't have to buy it just because I brought it over here. And we didn't even bargain with it. Mom was a good bargainer, but we asked him how much, and he said, well, they want 600 baht. He said, I didn't promise him to get that much. He didn't want to get anybody upset about it. Well, we weren't about to bargain with that, because it was special because the bass was a solid log that had been carved out, so it was a perfect sound box. You didn't have any cracks or anything. And then they put the pieces on the end and the bottom, and the keyboard was the bamboo. So we paid him the 600 baht and took it home, and Mom enjoyed it, and Bob can tell you how neat the sound is. He's got it up in Ohio now, and getting to play it sometimes. Somebody, I think Ben told me he heard you play it one time up there at church. I don't remember where it was. But we enjoyed that Renat, and I think it was a standard size, but the bass didn't seem quite as long as some of the others I'd seen, but it had the full keyboard. But it was very solid, and basically until Mom got sick, I kept it in the trunk of the car, kept the keyboard in a gunny sack that a church had given us. So we kept the keyboard rolled up, and in the bag here in the house where we had the cooling and the heat. Because one other time before we learned that, we'd been invited up to further north in Alabama for a Sunday night meeting, Scottsboro. And we got up there, and we'd had the Renat out in the trunk, even the keyboard too, without thinking. And when we went in and Mom was tuning it up or trying to play it a little bit, back in the Sunday school room before church, some of the pieces of wax started falling off. It got so cold. And of course that threw the sound off, and I don't know if she had taken a candle or if we asked somebody at church if we could get a candle, and she would drip the wax back on the place and stick the wax back on and work with it till she got the sound right. So she'd tune it up, that way. And so we always carried the wax with us. And one time we were over at a town in South Carolina. There's a Baptist school named after the town. In fact, Mom got her picture on the front of the state paper with her playing the renard, and I was standing back there with the little cymbals, the little chings. That made the front page of state paper, the only time that's happened. But I can't remember the town, but anyhow, the meeting was being held at the campus of the school. It was a missions emphasis weekend, and we were going to play she was going to play the instrument that night, and I don't think we had a speaking part in it, but she was setting it up. Really, we took it in the auditorium and started to play it, and the wax started falling off right there, in the meeting. And so Mom apologized, said, if you don't mind, we'll take it back and fix it and play for you after the sermon or after something. So we did. We took it in the side room, and she stuck the pieces back on. At Christmas time, there was one emperor or county up in the neighboring province from us that they had about 4 little house churches there, Baptist churches. But once a month, they would all meet together to have that fellowship and see each other and everything. And at Christmas time, they always had a joint meeting in one of the places. And so Mom got invited to play there several Christmases. That was always one of the highlights. And I actually wrote a Christmas song, too, that we used. It was Thai lyrics, which I translated into English later, but it was based on one of the Thai tunes. So they didn't have any new Christmas carols in a long time, so they enjoyed hearing that, too. But they always wanted Mom to come if she could. That was and one time we had Vernon Dietrich in the Rayong province down by the sea. They had a team come from the States. We had a doctor, we had a nurse, a lawyer, teacher, prison chaplain, who was the main speaker for the week. And seemed like, we had a businessman. But they would meet with different tradespeople, through the week, and they could answer questions or maybe give them some tips on how to maybe do some things they hadn't been doing. And then we had some joint meetings together. And they told me later, they wanted us to come to help translate, but also they wanted the Thai music. And Vernon told me later, he said, everybody in town that talked about it said all they talked about was that Thai music, that was something they knew about and liked. I took Mom to play at our Rotary Club in Bangkok when we lived there those 3 years from 70 to 73 and worked at the Student Center. And her Mom used her music there too. She had a music class at the Student Center, and they made a choir. Now this was a nursing class, mostly it was nurses, and they talked about nursing things a little bit, but a lot of music. And at the Christmas program that year, she had about a 30-voice choir that sang so pretty. So that was music again. We lived in a neighborhood there in Bangkok. We didn't know anybody, but we found this house. It was within the cost limits of our mission, and it was right next door to the landlady's house. She owned both properties, and we had a little bit of problem at first because our mission treasurer was out of the country. She was helping audit the books in Vietnam at that time, and we didn't get the money to the landlady quite as quick as she thought we should, because we were supposed to to give her 3 months, equivalent of 3 months rent to start with. So when our treasurer got back, and I told the landlady that she's back now, she got in late at night, and then Fanny said, if you'll just have the lady's chauffeur, she had a government car and a driver. She was some kind of a executive secretary to the prime minister. And she said, if you'll just have them come by the, our office there in Sorgason, we'll bring the check down to her. I forgot her name, but the lady said, I will not do that. She said, you bring the check to my office. And I said, okay. But the funny thing was that this was in like April, and we, at Christmas time, early December, we thought, well, let's have a little get-together at the house, see if we can get acquainted with our neighbors. So I wrote a little invitation. Kunwigi took them around, and when they got there that night, there was about four families represented. And they came to the gate all at the same time. They were probably as wondering as we were, what's going to happen here. But they came, and we let them in, and got to the little patio, and everybody took their shoes off and got to the front door, which was a double wide screen door open on the first floor. And we found out that night that the lady to the left of us, she was a royal princess. She was a cousin of the queen. And she was married to the guy that ran the telephone organization in Thailand. And the first thing she asked, after we got acquainted, she said, I want to know who plays the Ronadek in this house. Said, I've been hearing it, and I'm enjoying it, but I can't see who's playing it. We had those bushy, different kind of plants over there. And it wasn't very far to our fence, maybe about 4 feet, but those bushes blocked it off. She said, I've tried to see from the downstairs and out in the yard and go upstairs to look down, but I still haven't seen anybody. Well, the landlady, whom Mom had never met and who used to be upset with her, she stepped over and put her arm around her waist. She said, oh, that was my good friend Kun Maxine playing. She took credit, for being her friend then. Well, she'd been watching. They had a paling fence. What do you call it? It wasn't solid. It had the cracks, boards. And I'd seen her out there a little bit between our house and hers, looking through there when Mom was playing. And later she started coming to the student center. She took a couple classes with Mom. Her driver would bring her over there. But that was so interesting. And of course, I wish I could remember that lady's name on the other side. But she was a little chubby lady, and Mom and her exchanged recipes and things. And we had that get together. We just sang some mostly Thai songs and some refreshments and talked and a little bit about Christmas. And then the next year we had them, that was 71. Yeah, 71, we had a sit-down meal, and they all came. Well, the other neighbors, the people on the other side of the royal princess, and she told us about the king and queen sponsoring their wedding, a little bit about that, So she was a real deal. Well, the next family over was the treasurer, he had head of the royal treasury for the king and queen. So he came, him and his wife, and then across the street were two doctors, a husband and wife. He was a urologist, but he was the medical director at the largest government hospital, and I can't remember the name, but it was over there near the student center, and it was a huge place. The only time I was ever there was to have a test to see if they could find, when they found out that I had a blockage, and it was, they called it elephantiasis, but I went to that hospital for that, but I'd never been there for anything else. It was huge, but he was the medical director, Dr. Ottesit, I remember that, and his wife was a radiologist at Chulalongkorn Hospital. And later, their son was just a little bitty kid then, riding his trike around. Later, I'd read in the newspaper the son had become a politician, and he was a representative from one area of Bangkok at one time. But anyhow, they were just so friendly and down to earth. The doctor, he came over one day and asked me if I would join their Rotary Club. He said, we're starting a new Rotary Club, Thai-speaking Rotary Club. It's going to meet there at Patuna. I'm pretty close to the student center in one of the hotels. And said we meet every Monday. So at that time I was filling in at the business manager's office. So I told him when the regular guy got back, I'd be glad to join, and I did, and got to be friends with the fellow who was the assistant prime minister, and who was called Mr. Rotary for Thailand. He'd got it started, I think, and later became the president of Rotary International. Well, I went to the meetings, and I hadn't been going very long, and they told me that it was in the Constitution or bylaws that every new member was supposed to make a speech about why they wanted to be a Rotarian. So my day was set up on one of those Mondays, and so I took Mom with me and took the Renat so we could have some music. And I gave a little sermon on where Jesus said about those who are greatest are servant of all, and the Rotary motto was service above self, which is a wonderful motto. And I got to go with them on some of their medical projects there in the slums a few times. But anyhow, back to that day. So when I got through talking, we had the Renat. It was a typical U-shaped table. And of course, Mom and I were up there at the front table. But we went back, and at that time we could still, this was about early 73 or late 72, we were able to sit on the floor. So we had our mat and the Renat down there. And when Mom started playing, now these were businessmen, government officials, military officials, lawyers, doctors and surgeons, and university professors. They stood up and started clapping. I mean, that was quite it was a surprise. I mean, these guys, they didn't, you had to be, I guess, kind of special to get their attention because they were VIPs, most of them. But they stood up and clapped, and then they sat down and listened to her play. And we did 2 songs, and I sang parts of a couple of them, and well, when she got through, they gave her another ovation, and when it was over, right away soon, they started coming down to talk to her. And they wanted to know, well, one of the fellows who was an older man, I think retired, but he said, I've got some tapes with Renat music of classical songs, he said, and he brought them to me later to give to her. I don't remember if we ever got around to playing them. I think we did, but anyhow, they were asking her, who were your teachers? Typical Thai style, they'd have a teacher. She said, I did not have a human teacher. Said, Jesus was my teacher. Well, one of them said, we didn't know Jesus knew Thai music. It was so interesting, but they were so taken with her. And later, after we moved to Chachoengsao, they got in touch with us to see if she would come and play some Christmas carols for them on the piano. Ajahn Paibun was our pastor at Bang Kla for a while, and he was. It was interesting. He had been a gardener at the hospital, but he knew he was a Christian for a number of years, and his wife was a strong Christian, and I think he went to seminary from that gardener's job with the understanding the church had asked him, and he may have come back and forth some and preached. So, and then later he was a pastor at some other churches. But he wanted to learn to play the piano, and his, well, I may be getting mixed up. Ajahn One was our pastor at one time before Paibun. and his wife wanted to learn. I think Pi Boone just at that time just wanted to learn to play to help with the work of the church. So she had these two for sure, and I don't remember. I think those were the main ones, but yeah, Kunju Liang from our Chaching Sao Baptist Church, who played. He played by the Japanese style. They had kind of like shaped notes too, of different kind, but symbols, that indicated the different sounds, and that's the way he had learned. Now he might have become more playing by ear later on when he got more skilled. He came out there for several weeks, and they practiced on our piano. A church in Atlanta, their pastor had been over to spend some time with us and see the work, and later they wanted to do something for us. He'd said something to Mom about it. She said, well, we would love to have a piano in the home, and so they gave us a piano. Sent the money so we could buy it there in town in Bangkok, and then later on, it was getting a little out of tune, and so I went to the company to see if we could buy a tuning wrench, and they said, well, normally they would not do that. They had their own tuners, and they probably made some money off of it, but one of their men was going to Germany for some kind of a meeting, and so he bought us a wrench and brought it back, and so we just paid him, and I probably gave him a little extra, but we had that available, and if the piano got out of tune, we would open it up, and Mom would ask me to turn it this way or that way, a little bit, and she would listen until we got it back in tune. But her voice, she could blend with anybody. I mean, she was an alto that could just fit in with any group to make the sound right. In our fun night at mission meeting one year, there was an English-speaking church in Bangkok that was an amateur magician. And the folks there liked him. They'd seen his show, and so the mission committee invited him to come and do his magic show at our fun night. And I guess they'd told him about Mom, because when he got ready to go up there, he pointed at her. She was sitting over there with the crowd, and he said, I need some music. And he pointed right at her. So she went up to the piano, and he didn't tell her what to play, but every kind of act, if it was spooky or if it was funny, she had a tune to fit it. And he told her afterwards, he said, that is amazing, young lady, that you could play just exactly what I needed. He might have teased her about would she go to work for him or something, accompany him in his other shows from time to time. And all the missionaries were amazed too. I mean, the ones that really saw what was going on. We had 2 or 3 other missionary wives that played the piano, and one of them, Dr. Gocher, was kind of a classically trained and all, but they couldn't improvise like Mom, and when they wanted to have just some quartet singing or Southern gospel sing along, with the missionaries, it was always Aunt Maxine that had to play the music, because, well, she had grown up on it to a certain extent, but I think no matter what, if just listening to it, she knew the style and how to play it. Our girls, well, Beverly especially, always, whenever she's playing here at the house or before, they always wanted to play the Beer Barrel Polka for them. And she could play it, I mean, just right up to speed, But, and we got her a piano after we retired, but after she got sick. But once in a while, even then, not very often, but she would sit down back when it was still working, do a little playing on it. So it was a big part of her life, and it was certainly a great contribution to our missionary life.